I was kept like a canary in a gilded cage for 10 years, even until my death. He never promised me a wedding. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to 10 years ago, to prevent the nightmare from repeating itself. The very first thing I did after rebirth was to find his future arch-nemesis. Back then, he was just a mechanic, broke and struggling. I slammed my bank card on the table. Marry me. After marriage, I'll give you my entire salary. He clenched his teeth. If you make over $3,000 a month, I'll say yes. Chapter 1. I proposed to Thomas. At that moment, he had a cigarette dangling from his mouth. What do you see in me? I thought for a while before forcing out. You're handsome? Heh. That sneer made my face flush with embarrassment. I summoned the courage to ask. So, will you marry me? Thomas didn't answer. He stared at me intensely, as if he had already figured out my little scheme. I stiffened and met his gaze, hoping he would see the sincerity in my eyes. After a long pause, he smiled, with a cocky tone. He said, "A wife delivered to my doorstep for free, why wouldn't I say yes?" And so I got married. On the second day after traveling back in time, holding the little red marriage certificate, I still felt a deep sense of unreality. In my previous life, I had actually met Thomas. That was in the 7th year of being imprisoned by Oberon. I escaped from the villa with no money or belongings. On the street, I ran into Thomas. By then, he was already a renowned entrepreneur, dressed impeccably. His presence was sharp and unapproachable. I begged him to help me. Thomas arranged a place for me to stay and gave me a plane ticket to leave. But in the end, Oberon still found me, unwilling to recall the past. I looked up at Thomas and asked, "Where are we going next?" "I'm taking you back to your home." I was stunned. "Aren't we married?" "So what?" "So you weren't planning to take me back to our home?" Chapter 2. Thomas lived in a housing complex that hadn't opened yet. The building wasn't even topped out. Construction workers were constantly coming and going. I used to work here carrying bricks. Got some ties with the contractor before it's handed over. I crash here rent-free. Maybe seeing the doubt in my eyes, Thomas explained on his own. The place was raw industrial style. Other than a military cot, there was nothing inside. The bathroom didn't even have a flushing toilet. 4 showers. There was just a faucet. Thomas looked at me, regretting it? "You can still run now." "I don't regret it." I put my luggage down. "We'll sleep here tonight." "Isn't the bed a bit too small?" Thomas narrowed his eyes and replied, "It's enough." At night, I lay on Thomas's military cot. He casually laid out 2 newspapers and lay on the floor. There were no curtains in the room. Moonlight shone clearly through the glass. "Thomas, are you asleep?" Worried he'd catch a cold sleeping on the floor, I scooted to one side of the cot. "Do you want to come up?" The bed was small, but if we squeezed, it should work. A few seconds later, Thomas finally said, "If I get up there, you won't be getting any sleep." I clutched the blanket tighter. "I don't mind." As soon as I said that, Thomas pounced like a beast given permission. I was caught off guard and instinctively turned my head away. The weight on top of me eased. In the moonlight, I saw a mocking expression on Thomas's face. "Don't say things you don't mean. I'm the type who takes it seriously." With that, he moved to lie back on the newspaper. Seeing his intention, I grabbed his shirt. My fingers brushed against his body through the fabric. Thomas shivered all over and looked at me, eyes dim. I bit my lip. "I really want to." Afraid he might say no, I recklessly scratched twice inside the fabric. Thomas's gaze deepened. "Now you've got no chance." Unlike Oberon, whose muscles came from gym training, Thomas had the natural wheat-colored tan of a long-time laborer. His abs were solid, and his whole body exuded strength. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore. I cried until I was convulsing before he finally stopped. He roughly kissed away my tears and muttered, "So delicate." His tone carried displeasure. I was already in pain all over, and not only did he not comfort me, he even blamed me out of nowhere. I got upset too and turned away, not wanting to look at him. He didn't speak either, got out of bed, and I didn't know where he went. Hugging the blanket, the more I thought about it, the more wronged I felt. In my last life, I was kept by Oberon like a canary for 10 years. It wasn't until death that I was finally set free. Chapter 3. I thought it was heaven's mercy, giving me a second chance at life. I didn't expect Thomas to be like a different person. Just as I was crying, a warm towel suddenly covered my face. I didn't know when Thomas had come back. He was holding a basin and a hot towel. Crying? I denied it. No. Thomas roughly wiped my face, then turned away to wring out the towel. What are you doing? There's no hot water in the house. No way to shower. Wiping down will make you feel better. My body did feel sticky and uncomfortable. I was too embarrassed to stay angry. Blushing, I reached for the towel. I'll do it myself. Stay still. Thomas ignored my movement. He lifted the blanket and placed the warm towel directly on me. A moment later, I heard Thomas's voice. Don't be mad. I'll be gentler next time, okay? His voice carried a bit of awkwardness. Heat slowly rose to my face, and I couldn't help but smile faintly. I pulled the blanket over my face. When I woke up the next day, Thomas was already fully dressed. On the low table were 2 steamed buns. I didn't know when he had gone out to buy them. The water's hot. After you wash up, I'll take you to work. No need. I can go by myself. Thomas glanced at me. There are a lot of construction workers around here. It's not safe for a young girl like you to go alone. Then he added, call me after work. I'll come pick you up. After I slowly finished washing up, I noticed the bank card on the table. It was the one I gave him yesterday when I proposed. Don't forget your card. Thomas glanced at it. You keep it. I'm not the kind of man who needs a woman's money. Liar. He was obviously broke. But since Thomas didn't take it, I didn't argue. In my mind, I started calculating, maybe I could use the money in the card to find us a new place to live. If Thomas wasn't willing, at least we could get a new bed, though it wasn't a golden cage like in my past life. Looking at Thomas made me feel an odd sense of security. That good mood lasted all the way until I arrived at work. As soon as I stepped into the office, Virginia walked over mysteriously. Camila, I have good news for you. She lowered her voice. My cousin has a thing for you. I said, what? She pulled me aside, eyes gleaming. My cousin is not just anybody. He's super handsome, has a great personality, graduated from Cambridge, and his dad is the richest man in the country. Tons of rich heiresses try to get close to him, but he's never shown any interest until yesterday, when he told me he wants to get to know you through a setup. Virginia's eyes sparkled. Girl, your good days are coming. Cambridge graduate. Father is the richest man. A name suddenly surfaced in my mind. My face went pale in an instant. I forced myself to stay calm and replied as steadily as I could. Please tell your cousin I'm really sorry. I don't have the luck. I'm already married. Virginia didn't believe me. We've been co-workers for a year, and you didn't even have a boyfriend. How are you suddenly married? It's true, we got the marriage certificate. The wedding hasn't happened yet, but I'll invite you when it does. I smiled. I have 2 more classes. I'll head to the classroom now. After speaking, I quickly walked away. Only after leaving the room did I feel the strength drain from my entire body. Oberon, in my previous life, he wasn't supposed to appear this early. Why is he showing up so much sooner this time? And how does he know Virginia and I work at the same elementary school? My hands and feet were ice cold. I tried to comfort myself. This life. I was already married. I had Thomas. I absolutely would not repeat the same mistake. Chapter 4. Oberon's early appearance definitely shook me. I was distracted all day. My right eyelid kept twitching. It felt like something was bound to happen. Sure enough, just as I stepped out of the school gates after work, I saw a black car parked outside. The flashy logo practically screamed for attention. When he saw me, the man inside stepped out, holding a bouquet of roses. Hello, miss. He called out to me and introduced himself with a smile. Sorry to bother you like this. I'm Oberon, Virginia's cousin. There were students getting out of school all around us, and parents waiting to pick up their kids. The bouquet Oberon held stood out, flamboyant and showy. Someone recognized me and started clapping. Others joined in, urging me to say yes. My face went pale. What do you want? Don't be nervous. I just wanted to get to know you, Oberon said. lips curved into a slight smile. I happened to see you once when I was waiting for Virginia, and I really liked you. I know I came uninvited today, but there's no pressure. Think of it as making a new friend. Even though Oberon acted smooth and composed, I still sensed the madness behind his eyes. Just when I felt helpless, I spotted Thomas in the corner. He was straddling a beat-up motorcycle, a cigarette between his lips, glancing at me sideways. Like all of this had nothing to do with him. It was like a drowning person suddenly seeing a floating log. I ran straight toward him. The familiar smell of motor oil on Thomas brought me back to my senses. I turned to Oberon and said, I already explained to Virginia, I'm married. Oberon clearly didn't expect that. The smile on his face froze. His eyes drifted toward Thomas, and for a split second, I caught a flash of hatred in his gaze. He covered it up quickly, but I noticed it. Hatred? This was supposed to be the first time he met Thomas. Why would he look at him with hate? Oberon recovered quickly and adjusted his expression. My bad. I should have found out more about Camilla's personal situation first. Since I already bought the flowers, I won't take them back. Let me just wish you both a happy marriage. Then he offered the bouquet to me. A beauty deserves flowers. I'm sure your husband won't mind. Before I could respond, Thomas suddenly chuckled. Who says I don't mind? He looked at Oberon. I'm a petty guy. I don't like my beautiful wife accepting things from other men. With that, Thomas popped a pink helmet onto my head. Put it on. Looking at the brand new helmet, I felt inexplicably happy. I couldn't help but ask, did you buy it just for me? Found it in the trash. I grinned. Next time, could you find a blue one? I like blue. Thomas raised an eyebrow and pretended to take it back. I quickly secured it on my head and tapped it twice with my knuckle. Does it look good? There was a hint of a smile in Thomas's eyes. He reached up and pulled the visor down, then said, dummy. When I looked back, Oberon was already gone. After what happened today, everyone now knew my husband was a mechanic. During recess, I overheard a few teachers chatting. Good looks don't mean much. She still ended up with a guy like that. You didn't see his motorcycle. It sounded like a tractor. Laughter erupted. When I walked in, someone deliberately asked, Camilla, where does your husband work? My husband just bought a Benz. He could use someone reliable for maintenance. Let's support your guy's business. Sure, I'll send you the address later. Virginia couldn't take it anymore. She dragged me out of the office. Are you stupid? They're bullying you and you're just taking it? You're good looking and have a decent job. Why would you end up with? She paused, then added, don't get mad. I'm just being honest. You just graduated and got duped. Thinking love can beat money, you'll regret this someday. Honestly, give my cousin a chance. He said he doesn't mind that you're a divorcee. Virginia, your bag is nice. I cut her off, eyes landing on the Hermes bag on her desk. New? Virginia froze, her face flushing red. Yeah. She was just an ordinary salaried worker. It was obvious who gave her that bag. And why. I didn't call her out. My husband and I are doing just fine. How we live is our business. Please don't talk about him anymore. I don't like hearing it. Chapter 5. That day after work, Thomas didn't show up on his motorcycle. Where's your bike? Sold it. Thomas didn't explain further. Just gave a slight smirk. Let's go. He tugged me forward. But the direction we were heading in was different from usual. I had no idea what Thomas was up to. After walking a few hundred meters, we stopped at a residential complex near my school. 3rd floor. Go up and take a look. A vague guess surfaced in my mind, but I didn't dare to believe it. I slowly walked up to the 3rd floor. The door of the middle unit was wide open. When I stepped inside, it was a small 2-bedroom apartment. Not very big, but decorated with incredible warmth. The curtains were the color of the sky, lightly lifted at the edges by the breeze. Sunlight from the setting sun streamed in through the windows, casting a golden glow throughout the room. He remembered I liked blue. I couldn't describe the feeling. Having lived 2 lives, I had stayed in lavish mansions and crumbling bare concrete apartments, but this was the only moment my heart felt completely filled with happiness. You sold the motorcycle to rent this place? This neighborhood was in a school district. Even though the buildings were old, the rent wasn't cheap. Thomas probably didn't have enough money to cover the usual 1 deposit. 3 months upfront policy. Thomas didn't mention the motorcycle again. He simply said, "It's close to your school. Makes commuting easier. And that old place didn't have hot water. You're too delicate for that." Before he finished his sentence, I turned and hugged Thomas around the waist. Thomas froze at my sudden throw myself into his arms move. After a moment's pause, his arms came around my back from behind and held me tight. "All right. Now's not the time for you to cry. Save the tears for tonight. Just for me, yeah." Shameless. That night, Thomas really did make me cry. Afterward, he pulled me into his arms, kissed the corner of my lips with satisfaction, and said, "My wife was right, a double bed really is way better than a single. Should have moved sooner." When did I ever say that? I held it in with great restraint and didn't kick him off the bed. The next day was Saturday. Thomas and I had planned to go back to the unfinished apartment to get our things. By afternoon, Thomas still hadn't returned. "I might not make it today. Something came up at the shop," he said when he called. I didn't think much of it. "Then I'll go myself." There wasn't much, just one suitcase. It was chaotic on Thomas's end, and I didn't hear him respond clearly before he hung up. Previously, Thomas never allowed me to go there alone. Mostly because there were too many workers around. He always felt it wasn't safe. But it was broad daylight now, and I was just picking up some stuff. So I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't expect that as soon as I entered the apartment, 3 or 4 workers followed me in. "You live here alone, miss?" A chill ran down my spine. "Who are you? Get out. We work here. Why should we leave?" The one in front chuckled. "We've seen you hanging around here with that guy. You two get pretty wild." "Huh? Why not have some fun with us too?" The place was too empty. I couldn't find a single thing to defend myself with. Gritting my teeth, I turned and tried to run, but the man reacted quickly. He grabbed my hair and threw me to the ground. "Nice little body you've got. Been craving you for a while. Been waiting for this day." As he said that, he pressed down on me. I struggled desperately, screaming at the top of my lungs. Just as his hand was about to touch my clothes, the door was suddenly kicked open. The man pressing down on me was immediately thrown to the floor by a blow. The other 2 workers looked ready to jump in. "I'm the developer of this place. You sure you want to mess with me?" The 3 of them looked at each other, seeming to weigh the truth of that statement. After a moment, they cursed and ran off. Oberon took off his suit jacket and draped it over me. Then he turned to the assistant standing beside him and said, "Find them. You know what to do." The assistant nodded and left. Only then did Oberon lower his head. "Do you remember me?" My fingers clutching the fabric had turned pale. "No, I don't." I handed his jacket back and picked up my suitcase. "Thank you for your help today." As I tried to walk past him, Oberon suddenly grabbed my wrist. "You seem really afraid of me." "We're not close. Why would I be afraid of you?" "Fair enough." Oberon let go of me. "But what are you doing here?" "If I remember correctly, this building isn't even finished yet. It's none of your business." "True, but I'm the one developing this property." Oberon stared at me. "So technically, you're squatting. What do you think? Should I sue Thomas for illegal occupancy?" "What do you want?" "I want you." Oberon didn't even try to hide it. "Camila, I told you from the very beginning, I want you. And I told you, I'm married. That's not my problem." I pressed my lips together tightly. He leaned in until we were eye to eye. "That man can't give you the life you deserve. A pearl like you shouldn't be left gathering dust in his hands. So, what will it be? Do I send your man to jail? Or do you come with me and live the life of someone above it all? You choose." I gripped the suitcase tightly and turned to leave. This time, Oberon didn't stop me. Chapter 6. It wasn't until I left the complex that I realized I was trembling uncontrollably all over. 3 workers had followed me in, and Oberon had coincidentally shown up to save the damsel in distress. I didn't believe for a second that it was just a coincidence, even with a second life. Oberon was still the same. Anything he wanted, he would stop at nothing to get it. I called Thomas several more times, but no one picked up. As it got darker, I started to feel that something was wrong. Since we got married, Thomas had never stayed out this late. I ran straight to the shop where he worked. The place was a mess. I stopped an older janitor. "Do you know where Thomas is?" "Thomas? He went to the hospital." I was stunned. Why would he go to the hospital all of a sudden? The janitor shook his head. Poor guy. Got into it with some thugs who don't play by the rules. After I got the address and rushed to the hospital, Thomas was just being wheeled out of the exam room. There were 2 blood streaks on his face, and his right arm was in a splint. His clothes were caked with mud, dotted with visible spots of red. My tears spilled out instantly. Thomas, what are you doing here? He came over and wiped my tears with his uninjured hand. Come on now, I'm not dead. Am I? What's with the crying? Still cracking jokes at a time like this. I was a bit angry, about to speak, when a voice interrupted me. Holy shit, Thomas. Your wife's gorgeous, like straight up fairy level gorgeous. Then muttered under his breath. No wonder you don't hang out with us at night anymore. If I had a wife that pretty, I wouldn't go out either. Only then did I notice a young guy standing behind Thomas. He looked about college-aged, staring straight at me. His gaze was clear and open, not at all annoying. His blunt compliment made me a little embarrassed. Thomas, however, curled his lips in good humor. Back off. That's my wife. After confirming with the doctor that aside from a minor fracture in his right hand, the rest were superficial injuries, I finally relaxed. What happened to you? Before Thomas could answer, the boy cut in angrily. Some asshole came in today. Totally unreasonable. Nothing was wrong with his car, but he insisted Thomas wrecked it and demanded compensation. Of course we refused. And then he brought a bunch of people and trashed the shop. You didn't call the police? What's the point? The guy's obviously someone important. His license plate had 5/8 in it. People like us with no power or connections can't even dream of that kind of number. 5/8? Suddenly something clicked. What kind of car? Black Hummer. The boy sighed again. Now that we've crossed a big shot like that, what do we do? Thomas, do you think the boss will blame us for this? I didn't hear a word after that. It was like everything went black before my eyes. Oberon, again. Suddenly, a hand pinched my cheek. I gasped softly in pain, meeting Thomas's teasing eyes. Looking at his calm expression, I was confused. You're not worried? Worried about what? You know, what comes next. Thomas snorted. Worst case. I quit. What else can they do to me? Then he grinned. Besides, don't I have a wife to support me? She gives me her entire $3,000 a month salary. Remember? He was referring to the day I proposed. My face flushed again. I softly replied, all my money's yours. Thomas flicked my forehead with a finger and said again, dummy. Chapter 7. Thomas got fired. I overheard his boss from the repair shop calling him. This one's on me. I'm sorry, but the other party's too powerful. I had no choice. Thomas was smoking, his expression unreadable. After hanging up, he called out to me, wifey. I thought he was about to tell me he'd been let go. Just as I was wondering how to comfort him, I heard him say, I think I smell kind of sour. Help me take a bath. I replied, huh? Looking up, there wasn't even a trace of disappointment on Thomas's face. And he wanted me to help him bathe. My face flushed red. Why are you always thinking about that kind of thing? What kind of thing? Thomas raised an eyebrow. My right arm's in a cast and can't get wet. I just wanted to ask you to run some bathwater for me. Then he leaned in and whispered in my ear. Or, do you have other thoughts? Say the word, and I'll risk this arm to satisfy you. I flew into an embarrassed rage and forgot all about his being fired. Fuming, I stormed off to the bathroom. Behind me, I could still hear his delighted laughter. But during the bath, Thomas still noticed what had happened to me earlier that day. His hand gently gripped the back of my neck. Frowning, what happened? Only then did I notice the bloody scratch on my neck, and several clearly visible bruises from being grabbed, probably from when I struggled earlier in the day. I hurried to cover them with my hair. It's nothing, I hurt myself by accident. Thomas let out a cold laugh. Oh, you accidentally strangled yourself and scratched yourself while you were at it? With no way out. I had to tell the truth. Earlier today I went to the unfinished apartment to grab something and got followed. Seeing Thomas's face instantly turn dark, I quickly explained. But nothing happened, someone saved me. Thomas didn't say anything. We just stood there, frozen, in the cramped bathroom. The steamy mist was fading, and the breeze on my skin gave me a chill. I shivered. Thomas finally reacted, wrapping me in a towel. I tugged on his hand. Are you mad? I shouldn't have let you go alone. His eyes were full of pain and regret that couldn't be hidden. But the one at fault was clearly me. I couldn't hold it in any longer and poured out everything I knew in one breath. It was all Oberon. He's the one who used to send me roses at school. The Hummer was his. He smashed the shop on purpose. The workers who came to cause trouble were hired by him. He even waited there just to rescue me. He knows where we live. He said he's going to sue you. I don't know why he's like this, so cruel. Why he won't let go of me. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, I couldn't go on. I burst into tears, wanting to cry out every bit of injustice I'd held in for 2 lifetimes. I didn't understand. I'd never provoked Oberon. Why just wouldn't he leave me alone? Seeing me crying so hard, Thomas wiped my face with the towel. Why do your golden beans fall so easily? You're not mad at me? Mad at what? That you're too pretty? Too charming? That a thug on the street set his eyes on you? This man. The heavy emotions from before were blown away by those 2 sentences. I sniffled. Thomas, do you regret it? Regret what? Marrying me. Instead of answering, Thomas asked back, do you regret it? Marrying a broke, now unemployed mechanic? I shook my head hard. My wife doesn't regret it. What the hell would I regret? Thomas raised his brows slightly. My wife turned down a billionaire's son but picked me. She's putting in money and time to be with me. What am I complaining about? That sentence made me want to cry all over again. In fact, I did cry again, curled up in Thomas's arms. I said, I love you. Thomas hadn't expected a love confession. His whole body stiffened. He pulled me tightly against his chest and gave a husky saying, your man's right here. Chapter 8. After that day, Thomas became very busy. Even though he no longer had a job, he still left early and came back late every day. No idea what he was doing. Maybe he was scared by what happened with Oberon. Even though we had moved to a place next to the school, he still insisted on picking me up and dropping me off every day. When you're at school, just stay with the other teachers and don't wander around. Got it? I felt a little amused. I'm not a kindergartner. You know, I'm not that fragile. Thomas smiled. You are a little kid. But lately, Thomas had clearly been attending more social events. Sometimes, when he couldn't make it, he'd ask a former colleague he met at the hospital to help out. I felt bad and told the guy, it's just a short walk. I can manage on my own. Don't trouble yourself next time. No way. The guy grinned. Thomas gave me a mission, and I'll complete it even if it kills me. Besides, a fairy like you needs protection. He wouldn't be talked out of it. So I turned to Thomas. If you keep this up, people are going to gossip and say you're whipped. But Thomas wasn't ashamed at all. He rolled his eyes and said, I love doting on my wife. What's it to them? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That day at work, Virginia mysteriously pulled me into a corner and opened her phone. Is this your husband? I looked over. On the screen was a picture of Thomas drinking with a woman. The woman was strikingly attractive. Besides Thomas, there were 4 or 5 other men gathered around her. The room was dim, and I couldn't make out Thomas's expression, but it was definitely him. My friend took this at a bar. I thought this guy looked like him. Virginia looked at me. I heard he got fired from the repair shop. He's just a lowlife now. Look at him. Even stooping to selling his looks to drink with some woman. This is the true love you're talking about? You better be careful and don't catch something nasty. Have you said enough? My face darkened. Virginia, you keep bad-mouthing my husband again and again, stalking him, taking pictures, trying to drive a wedge between us. What exactly are you up to? You know full well what your real intentions are. I'm not saying it out loud, but that doesn't mean I don't understand. Whatever Oberon gave you, I won't ask. But from now on, unless it's work-related, don't speak to me again. I turned and walked into the office. A while later, Virginia came in. Her eyes were red. I vaguely heard a few coworkers comforting her, probably saying I didn't appreciate her kindness. That night, Thomas came home very late. You're just getting back. I sniffed. How much did you drink? Thomas deliberately rubbed his face against mine, disgusted with me. I laughed and dodged, and he pulled me into his arms, letting out a long sigh. Thanks for putting up with everything lately. I hugged Thomas back and shook my head. The next morning, I smelled perfume on Thomas's shirt. There was a faint lipstick stain on the cuff. I thought of the photo Virginia had shown me, and my heart felt sour. If I could choose, I'd rather Thomas were just a mechanic. The days passed like this, one after another, until the day I actually saw Thomas with a woman. That day, I was out shopping with a few teachers. We walked past an expensive Western restaurant. Suddenly, one of the teachers tugged on my bag and hesitantly asked, "Camila, doesn't that guy look a bit like your husband?" I looked over. The man was sitting by the window. Across from him was a woman with flawless makeup. My heart sank. It wasn't looked like, it was him. My face must have shown it, because my coworker noticed something was off and gave an awkward laugh. It's probably a work thing. They seemed to be talking pretty normally. I responded with a quiet and didn't look again. "Let's go." I had just turned away when a colleague suddenly screamed and yanked me back. "Camila, why your husband?" My heart skipped a beat, then I heard her say, "He just beat up that woman." I was speechless. Whipping around, I saw the previously fine dining table had been kicked over by Thomas. He stood tall, looking down at the pale-faced woman, a mocking smile at the corner of his mouth. I rushed forward, just in time to hear Thomas say, "You think someone like you could ever be good enough for me? Don't flatter yourself." Then he strode off in all his arrogant glory, only to make direct eye contact with me. A moment ago, he was proud and fierce like a little lion. But the second he saw me, he deflated. "Wifey?" Then he frowned and hurried to explain. "I don't hit women, this was an accident. My legs are long." I bumped the table, and it flipped. I let out a laugh. "I'm not mad at you." Thomas let out a sigh of relief, curled his lips into a smile, and took my hand. "Then shall we go home?" Once we got home, I finally learned that the person Thomas had been dealing with these past few days was Oberon's sister. The sales job was just a cover, it was all to get close to his sister. Thomas sneered. "Selena's the wild type, especially into young guys, and she's done all kinds of shady stuff in private." I cozied up to her and tapped into her inner circle, got quite a bit of information and sold it all to their family's rival company. It'll probably hit the news tomorrow. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it's enough to cause chaos in Oberon's family for a while they're busy cleaning up the mess. Oberon shouldn't have time to bother you. You did all that just so Oberon wouldn't have the time to mess with me? In a few days, I might need to take a trip to City C. I won't feel safe unless I block Oberon's path myself. The moment I heard Thomas was leaving, I couldn't help feeling reluctant. "Why are you suddenly leaving? How long will you be gone?" "About a week or so. If things go smoothly, I might have to travel frequently from now on." So it turned out, what Thomas had really been busy with all along was starting a transport company. Made a few contacts back when I was fixing cars. I leased a few trucks to start running deliveries. Didn't know a thing at first, so I had to do everything myself. He gave my head a firm rub. Wait for me to come back. On the day Thomas left, I still secretly slipped my bank card into his pocket. It held the 70,000 yuan I'd saved over the years. Everything I owned. I left a note. "You'll need money while you're out there. The pin is our birthday. Come back safe." Chapter 9. After Thomas left on his business trip, the story about Selena really did make the headlines. It had been deliberately manipulated and even dragged out some other scandals, classic rich family drama that sparked heated public discussion. Oberon was overwhelmed and, indeed, never showed up again. Life got easier for me too. At the end of the semester, it was time for the Outstanding Teacher Award selection. Each school only had one spot. According to earlier surveys, the school had originally planned to nominate me, but when the results were announced, the name on the list was Virginia's. The school administrators were clearly in a tough spot. They called me in and explained it was a decision from above. Everyone knew what that really meant. As I walked out of the principal's office, I spotted Virginia. Ever since the incident with the photo, we had barely interacted. Virginia gave a soft snort as she walked past me without saying a word. Originally, this whole thing didn't stir up much emotion in me, but when I video called Thomas that night, I couldn't help feeling a little wronged. I pouted, trying hard not to cry. Thomas immediately noticed something was off. What's wrong? I didn't want him to worry. Just watched a movie, left me feeling a little heavy. Thomas chuckled. Silly girl. After we hung up, I slapped myself a few times, mocking how I seemed to be regressing as I got older. In my last life, my father was wrongly imprisoned. My mother was pushed into serious illness, and I didn't shed a single tear through it all. But now, over something this minor, I almost cried in front of Thomas. In the middle of the night, I had just fallen asleep groggily when I suddenly heard the sound of the door lock turning. My heart jumped, afraid it was Oberon causing trouble. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept for self-defense and stood behind the door, waiting. The next second, the door opened. I swung the bat. The person seemed to have anticipated it and caught it midair. Then I heard a familiar teasing voice. What? Hiding some secret lover out there and planning to murder your husband now? I gasped in surprise. Honey, you're back? When my wife's in a bad mood, of course her husband has to be home to comfort her. How did you know I was upset? I'm not stupid. You think that acting of yours could fool me? The tears I had fought so hard to hold back started falling again. Thomas sighed. Crybaby. He only came back for one night. Early the next morning, he was on a high-speed train again. I didn't want him to leave. He kissed my forehead and said, "The company has already been registered in City C. Once summer break starts, come find me." I nodded vigorously and started counting down the days on my fingers. Another half a month passed. The school was finally on break. I eagerly bought a ticket to City C. It wasn't until Thomas drove me to his company that I realized things weren't as I had imagined. I had thought Thomas was just doing regular transport, leasing a few trucks to ship goods. But when I saw it with my own eyes, I realized it was actually a logistics company that combined e-commerce shipping and courier services. It wasn't very large yet, but it had already taken on many contracts. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. How did you even come up with this? I remembered in my previous life, Thomas had never come to City C. He was just an ordinary mechanic, later spotted by a foreign auto company boss and recruited into a multinational car group. Eventually, he branched out, led a research team, and focused on chip development. That was how he earned his first pot of gold. And over time, the car chip business grew bigger and bigger. But now, Thomas's life had been set on a different track, because of me. He left the repair shop early and never got the chance to meet that boss. He even came to City C and started a logistics company. E-commerce in City C has developed rapidly in recent years. And there's a gap in logistics. Since I know a bit about vehicles, I reinvested the money I made from trucking and decided to give this a shot. What Thomas didn't say was that, although we had been living in City A, the leading enterprise there was still Oberon's family group. In that place, any attempt Thomas made to start a business would have faced massive resistance. Because of me, he had no choice but to go elsewhere. Part of me felt heartache, but I couldn't help admiring his foresight. Because I believed, without a doubt, that Thomas's logistics company would soon become a vital link, an indispensable force in City C's e-commerce world. Chapter 10. Thomas had rented an apartment in advance. It was a small 2-bedroom place, roughly the same size as our old place in City A, but the rent was 3 times higher. Things are more expensive here. I poured all my money into the company, Thomas said, with a rare trace of embarrassment. I used the money from your bank card. It was yours to begin with. Thomas kissed the corner of my lips. From now on, my paycheck is all yours. The company was now registered, and it wasn't practical to keep commuting between cities. I had never been particularly fond of City A anyway. After discussing it with Thomas, we decided I might as well resign and move to City C too. I stayed until the new school year started, then went back to the school to formally complete my resignation. By then, Thomas's logistics company had already taken shape, and as a pioneering entrepreneur, he had even been invited to a few media interviews. A colleague, one of the same people who had mocked him back when I mentioned my husband was a mechanic, spotted me again and came over to chat. "We saw your husband on TV the other day. I always said Thomas had potential. Look, beauty really does come with insight. Now he's made it." Another chimed in. "Camila really has a good eye. If you know any other outstanding young men, you've got to introduce them to us." I glanced at the group of people crowding around me. It was the exact same group that had gossiped behind my back about Thomas back then. I didn't want to interact with them too much, so I just smiled and responded politely, Camila. Just as I was about to walk out of the school gates, I suddenly heard someone call my name. It was Virginia. She was wearing a black uniform-style dress and walked up quickly. Her tone was stiff as she said, I once tried to score some petty gain by pushing you toward my cousin. I owe you an apology. I pressed my lips together. No need to apologize to me. Wait. Virginia grabbed my hand. Camila, I'm sorry. I was forced into it too. The moment I heard those words, everything went black. When I woke up, I was already lying on a bed. The mattress was soft. The room was spacious. And beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, roses were blooming. This was the villa I had lived in for 10 years. My mind went blank for a moment, unable to distinguish which life I was in. Could it be I hadn't died? That I was still in the villa, and everything else had just been a dream? While I was lost in thought, the door creaked open. Oberon walked in. You're awake. I instinctively tried to get up, only to find my body limp, completely useless. Don't bother struggling. You can't move. I remembered Virginia just before I lost consciousness. Was it you? Oberon, do you even realize that restricting someone's freedom is illegal? But the moment I said that, Oberon laughed, as if he just heard the funniest joke. Restricting freedom? Camila, you were always mine. He walked closer, eyes gleaming with obsessive madness. You don't know this, but we've always been a pair. We've always lived here, together. And in that moment, I finally understood why. Despite all my careful efforts to avoid him, I could never escape Oberon. He had been reborn too. I completely calmed down. A pair from the start? Oberon, every single day I spent with you felt like a year in hell. It was worse than death. If you hadn't threatened me with my parents, I would have never stayed here with you. His face filled with shock. You, that's right. I remember everything from before. I looked at Oberon, which is why, in this life, I will never give you another chance to hurt me. I would never hurt you. No, Camila. You love me. We were together for 10 years. I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you alone at the villa. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have. He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he meant. If he hadn't, I wouldn't have died. Hearing that, I almost laughed. Oberon, don't you get it? After my parents died, why do you think I stayed by your side? I was collecting evidence. I wanted revenge for my parents. I needed to see you rot in prison with my own eyes. Only then could I feel at peace. You always wondered how your company's secrets got leaked. How the cops found out about the shady things you thought you'd covered up so perfectly. That was me. My goal was for you to pay, in full. Enough. No, it's not enough. I decided to let it all out. After you went to prison, I set that fire. I wanted you to lose everything, including what you'd tainted, the me you had so thoroughly defiled. Why did I love you so much? Why? In our past life, I had rejected Oberon's pursuit. He tricked my father into taking out high-interest loans and used that as leverage to force me into being with him. My father, unwilling to let me suffer, turned himself in to take the fall. My mother, devastated, fell gravely ill. Oberon cut off her access to medical treatment and made me move into the villa. I looked at Oberon with a cold sneer. Love? You think you have the right to even say that word? With that, I stood up from the bed and shifted my restraints. Oberon stared in disbelief. How are you? How can I move? I looked at him, emotionless. Last time, you drugged me and forced yourself on me. There's no way I would make the same mistake twice. As I spoke, I made a subtle gesture toward the door. Undercover police burst through it. Oberon lost control, spiraling into madness. He was still trying to talk to me. Camila, let's just forget everything. Let's start over. Please. I don't care what you did. I forgive you. Just then, I saw Thomas quietly appear at the doorway. I rushed over to him. As I passed Oberon, I said softly, "But I don't forgive you." Oberon was taken away. My whole body collapsed in exhaustion. I sank into Thomas's arms. Honey, don't you want to ask me anything? Thomas shook his head. It's all over. Yeah, it was all over. All the rights and wrongs, all the pain and hatred, they no longer had anything to do with me. From now on, I was just Thomas's wife. If you have time, can you come with me to visit my parents? Thomas smiled gently. Of course. Chapter 11. From the very first day I was reborn, I came up with an excuse to get my parents to leave Bin City. They returned to our rural hometown. They took early retirement and ended up living a fairly peaceful, comfortable life. They didn't know I had married Thomas. I hadn't dared to tell them. During the new year, Thomas brought a carload of festive gifts to my family home to pay his respects and to propose. That March, we finally held our wedding. After living 2 lives, this was the first time I ever wore a wedding dress. Thomas's parents had both passed away, and he had no relatives. So, on the family side, only mine were present. As he bowed and served tea, when he called out Mom, Dad, I clearly saw the tears at the corners of his eyes. For some reason, I suddenly thought of our past life. When I died, Thomas was already close to 40, still all alone. I had never heard any gossip or scandals about him. He lived such a quiet, restrained life, almost like he wasn't part of this world. If you hadn't married me, what kind of wife do you think you would have chosen? That night, I couldn't help asking Thomas. I don't know. Thomas paused and thought. Probably wouldn't have looked anymore. I got used to being alone. Then why did you agree when I proposed to you? Hearing that, Thomas seemed to recall something. He thought for a moment, then curled his lips into a smile. He said, back then, I just thought having someone by my side might be nice, especially a wife this beautiful. My eyes went wide. So, you're saying it was lust at first sight? Probably not. After all, you gave me your bank card. Thomas tried not to laugh. I guess I was tempted by the money too. Seeing me pout, Thomas kissed my forehead and said, Thank you, wifey, for giving me a home. No, it should be me thanking Thomas. Living 2 lives finally brought me to love.